Okay, so we haven't come up with a name yet for the podcast. We've been throwing out different things. We had the idea of QU avalanche, like coavalanche, but like I don't know if people will understand it, or if it will
I
even.
know it doesn't flow quite right as we wanted it to, but something with Cavalanche is just calling my name for sure.
Yeah. So if you have a suggestion, because I know the people on the internet are usually very creative, more creative than I can be, let me know. Let us know down. Let them know. Let them let them know down in the comment section below. But this is here. We're here to give you a good chunk of Cavs talk because there's just not enough Cavs talk out here. I mean, they're starting to pay attention now after that win versus the Celtics, but now we're really getting into more of the Cavs talk, and we just want to provide as much because I know y'all want it. Y'all hungry for it, right? Ab, can you let them know where you're from and what do you do outside of just this?
Yeah, so my name's Abby Mueller. I do quite a bit of sports content on the internet. Really started just like tweeting out my thoughts for the most part. You can follow me at Abby_Mueller_. Post a lot of just, live tweeting, random thoughts there. I also host a podcast, Just a Girl from Cleveland, born and raised in the suburbs of Cleveland and just been a diehard fan my whole life. Like legitimately, my parents' first date was at a Cavs game, actually. So it is in my blood, to my core, everything that I am is Cleveland sports. So I do that podcast once a week, talk all three teams, just whatever's going on. And then I also do some work for Sports Illustrated Browns Digest, talking Browns video work there. So yeah, it's been an exciting time of year to have the Cavs back in business after the Browns breaking our hearts for the last month.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, right? Because my dad used to always tell this story. He went to a Cavs game with my mom. My mom's from like Japan, like she like moved from Japan over here, and apparently she fell in love with Mark Price, and he has been mad about that ever since. Okay, he's been jealous of Mark Price for a while.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so this is hilarious, but a lot to talk about with this Cavs team. And, I know me personally, I remember watching Darius Garland last year. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's really good. He's really good. And then you watch Donovan Mitchell come out and you're like, oh, my goodness. Like, he's really, really good. And it makes you forget how good Darius Garland is. And then he comes out in that first quarter and it was almost like, hey, man, y'all know I'm really good too, right? And just like, just completely like demolishes the Celtics to start the game. I think he went 5 for 5 from three to start that game or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
he did not a single beat. Like I was kind of had the same feeling as you, where you're like, wow, Donovan Mitchell is just incredible. Like, how is this going to work? Is Darius Garland going to be able to come back in and match his energy? And it was just like, oh yeah, that's right. Darius Garland he was an all-star last year for a reason, and he is still that dude for sure.
Yeah, and it was like that was one of the concerns. I'm like, well, man, if Mitchell can go off like this, like, is that going to affect how you can play Darius? Like, is he going to have to go back to being off the ball? That's not where he shined in previous years. And it was like, oh no, 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 no. We're worried about the wrong thing. It's just going to be really easy to get 60 points out of two people now. You know what I mean?
It couldn't have been more perfectly split either. Like Darius ended up with 29 points and Donovan Mitchell had 25. So it was like, oh, this is just like the perfect balance automatically, where I thought maybe it would feel a little bit more imbalanced with Darius returning.
Yeah, and I thought one of the things that would be off with these two would be like, okay, they're gonna have some chemistry things, or they might have to be separated on the floor on certain times so that they can get their time to shine. But what I felt like was shocking and like very encouraging to see was they worked really well on the floor together in unison. There were multiple times where Darius was able to just take a spot up three from a Donovan Mitchell pass. There was that great Donovan Mitchell lob that he threw late in this game. Was that an overtime that sealed it? Yeah, it was like
It
there
really
were
was.
there were those moments there where it's like, oh, they like it felt like they had been playing together for a while. Like, is that just me being super optimistic, or is that something you saw too when you were watching them? Like, oh, these two seem to get each other as basketball players on the court and kind of understand each other's game already.
Yeah, they have that chemistry already. And I don't know if it has to do with, they both talked about playing together a lot this past summer. They were, even before we knew Donovan was coming to Cleveland, like they were already working out together and doing those things. So I think just building that chemistry of getting to know each other probably helped them a lot. And additionally, I just think the way they built this team is just full of so many guys who are so selfless and genuinely want to see each other succeed, that I think it is why it translates already so early in the season, because they all have that baseline of wanting to see each other succeed, wanting to play selfless basketball, getting other guys involved. And I think that really helps, that no one guy feels like he, needs a certain number of baskets in a game or touches in general. Like they just want to do whatever it takes to win. And I think that just helps the chemistry work out well.
Yeah, and it's like it reminded me of something I think LeBron really wanted to do in 2014 when he first came back to the Cavs, right? Where he just got beat by the Spurs. They had that super selfless system where they just passed the ball a million times. And I remember he came back to Cleveland, was like, we got to pass up great shots for good shots. We got to do it. We got to do it. But it didn't work as well because you had Kevin Love coming in there for the first year after he had been the main option in Minnesota. You had Kyrie Irving in there who had been the main option in Cleveland. And then obviously it's LeBron who's never been a selfish player, but he's still LeBron James, and you're going to want to get him the ball just because he's like one of the best players to ever do it. And oh my God, Deion Waiters was on that team. I forgot Deion Waiters. I remember watching Deion Waiters have like a contested jumper on the fast break, and he had Kevin Love and LeBron James wide open to each side of him, and he was like, "Nah, this is the best shot on the floor because I'm taking it." Like, it was an amazing like fail. In retrospect, when you look at like how the Cavs are able to do that now, but when they tried to do that in 2014, it just did not have the people, the personalities to get it done. Now you're seeing like Donovan Mitchell passes up wide open threes because he's like, "Nah, I need to give Evan a lob here or a hook here," and that's something that when you watch it, like Jeff Van Gundy seems like he wants to come out the booth to coach this team, like the way he drools over them in the broadcast. Yeah, he was like, "Oh, this is such a great team."
Yeah, look, I mean, this would be LeBron's like dream team to play on. It feels like, just with the selfless play, like you said, he kind of wanted that before, and it never quite clicked in that way. And when you look at the list of old LeBron teammates throughout his career, like some of the names that come up, you're like, that was his supporting cast. Like Deion Waiters was an example. There's so many from his first round in Cleveland. Like those teams were just ridiculous in the supporting cast he had, where he couldn't play the type of basketball that he truly is good at and wants to play. I mean, like Larry Hughes, those days, that was another brand of basketball too.
Dog, like Deion Waiters wasn't just there; he was in the letter, right? Like he was in the letter. Him and Andy Varejao, like he was like, "No, I specifically want these two dudes to stay on the team." And in retrospect, it is hilarious that he tried to implement that system with the people that we know that he would, like Kyrie and Deion Waiters. Like that was an era. Like that was one of my favorite 30-win basketball teams of all time, was the Kyrie, Deion Waiters backcourt, where it was like, look, either one of them gonna get 50 or we gonna get blown out by 50, but something interesting is gonna happen every game, because that was a team right there. That was an interesting team. And this team's just so far away from it. And I think Donovan and Darius is both of those guys being the main players of this team, and both of those guys as being probably some of the more selfless superstars that you could have. I mean, and you add in Evan Mobley, who he's almost like that, got that Nick Chubb quality of him, where he's just super quiet and like just kind of keeps to himself.
I never thought of that comparison, but Nick Chubb and Evan Mobley are like kind of the same dude. That's my new favorite comparison. I love it.
Nick Chubb, Evan Mobley, Amari Cooper. It's all a line of just like guys who could go to dinner and say nothing to each other and probably have a decent enough time. And like then there's
pointing at each other. It's those guys.
Except for Evan Mobley's like 8 feet taller than the rest of them. Yeah. And then you have Jared Allen, who's an all-star, is kind of like that same kind of like selfless kind of mindset. So when those are your four best players and they all kind of have the same vibe, you kind of have no choice but to kind of fit in or not if you're anybody else. And that's what we've seen here. One of the interesting pieces I think will really unlock something for this Cavs rotation is Ricky Rubio, because I think that allows a lot of flexibility with that second unit, and it gives you somebody. Because one of the things I saw with Darius, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about how he impacts the game. Is defensively as a point guard, he's actually pretty decent, and then also as a facilitator, he kind of opens things up so you can get more efficiency out of Evan and Jared in a way that Donovan doesn't have that chemistry yet with those two guys to open up. Ricky was really good with those two bigs last year, so now you can run rotations where you have him out there with those two. And I think, look, I love Jetty, I love Karras, but like sometimes when they have to be the main ball handler on any possession, something wacky could happen at any time. Like you get a wacky shot, and I think Ricky helps regulate those two so you can get more out of them. What do you think Ricky brings to this team, and why he's going to be such an important piece?
Well, not even on the court, like Ricky off the court, you can just tell the level of respect that everyone has for him. I mean, Darius talked about it at length last season on how much he just learned from being around Ricky, and Donovan coming in really reiterated the same stuff of when he used to play with Ricky many years ago on how much he learned from him and just the leadership qualities he brings. So I'm first of all just happy that we were able to bring him back, because I think it's really valuable for all of those young guys to have him around to learn from him. And then on the court, I really feel like I was thinking about like the Neto minutes that we were getting in a couple games. I don't think he got in at all yesterday, but he's been okay. But I'm pretty confident that's not going to stand the test of time throughout the season. So it would be good to kind of scrap those minutes for some Ricky minutes, and then obviously some additional from that as well. And getting involved with some of the bigs, like you said, and the way that he does such a good job. I definitely envision that being the future for him. And look, it'll be weird because I don't know when he's actually going to come back. He kind of hopes for maybe, the new year, January, February. We'll see where it ends up being. But then, you only have so much time to acclimate everything until playoffs start. So I think I'm really interested to see how they kind of decide to use him just based on the timetable for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And it's like nice that like it's not going to be like, hey, we need Ricky come back to make the playoffs. It's like they're probably going to be able to be very comfortable in their seating. Hopefully they're at the points where they're able to get up in these games to the points where, hey, we could throw Ricky out there for like 20 minutes and just see what lineups fit and match with him. Another interesting situation is this thing going on at the three, right? There's Isaac Okoro, who we all had high hopes for. There's Caris LeVert, who plays some minutes there. And there's Dean Wade, who's probably been the biggest surprise out of all three of those guys at the three. What kind of solutions do you think JB is going to try to cook up there at the three? And do you think Caris do you think Caris or Dean would be a better fit with the starting lineup given their different skill sets?
Yeah, if you would have asked me this like a month ago, I don't think I would have answered Dean Wade, but I'm like kind of on board for Dean Wade now. I, like everyone else, kind of had a little bit of higher hopes for Isaac and what he was going to be able to do offensively. I still think he has like had an impact on the defensive side of the ball so far, but it's just unfortunate that he didn't make the jump we were all hoping. I kind of like Karras off the bench still, to be honest, and would prefer maybe trying Dean Wade out in that starting lineup. I think Karras does well off the bench. He is kind of, like you mentioned, one night can have a great night and then take some really bad shots here and there. I mean, he had 40 points one night, 1 point the next night. That's just kind of what you get with Karras. So I kind of like him still off the bench, and then maybe putting Dean in that starting spot.
Karras is a great reminder of a player that like they're gonna average 18. But not everybody averages 18 for the same reasons, right? Like everybody assumes, 18 points a game. No, some days he gives you 40, some days he gives you 12, and that's how he gets to 18. Like he just gets to 18 because it's one or the other. The average is not the mode for him, right? It's not the most often. And that's one of the things I think, since he's that kind of a scorer, I think he would be more useful off the bench. But I think they're kind of waiting for Ricky to come back for that to be the case. It's like, okay, well, we don't want Karras to be completely in control in these situations, because then if he has a bad day, Because the thing with Kerry, sometimes you just got to pull him because he's just going to have a bad night, and you don't want that to pour into something else. But Dean, I think he's been where he surprised me most because I felt like it was pretty known he could shoot last year. He was pretty good at the 3-and-D stuff, but the defense that Dean Wade has been able to provide has been something that I thought was interesting. I mean, there were moments where he was up against Tatum and he held his own. And if you can hold your own at the 3 against Tatum, I feel good about you most places to at least not be such a weakness on the defensive side that you become something that can't be out there anymore. And then, JB always be talking about, hey, Dean has more offensively that he can offer if he just believed he can offer it. And I see what he be saying, because sometimes Dean goes to the rack with like absolute ferocity. And I'm like, yo, where did that come from, Dean? Like, I need to see that more often. He doesn't do that often enough. And it's kind of how I felt about Isaac last year, where I was like, okay, Isaac just needs to get a little bit more aggressive on these drives because he can get there. But Dean's, I think, a little bit better of a 3-point shooter. Well, I think he is a better 3-point shooter than Isaac at this point. Yeah. But it's interesting to see what the solutions are going to be, because when you look at this roster top to bottom, you really don't have any concerns about the Cavs bigs. You don't have any concern about, that Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell thing. It's really just the three where people can point to and go, okay, what's their solution here? Who are they going to play? And I understand when we tell people nationally, oh, we got Dean Wade, that means nothing to them, but that might end up being the solution.
The whole fan doesn't understand what he brings to the table, especially because he was an undrafted guy. But what a great story, though, too, just how far he has come in the last couple of years. I mean, those are my all-time favorite stories. I'm a big Lamar Stevens girl as well, big fan. And I love how far he has come to as an undrafted guy. I just always root a little bit harder, I think, for guys like that.
And they've been good at that the last couple of years of finding those kind of guys who can give them, like what Neto gave them some decent minutes. Who was it last year? They had this poor man when Darius Garland was hurt out here starting, like he was in the G League like 2 weeks ago. It was with 00. He was wearing 00. I forget his name.
I can see his face, but I can't remember his name.
I feel like his name.
Yeah, they do. They give those guys like legitimate shots too. Like they're not gonna just like give up on you overnight. They'll give you some time and see what you can do.
Yeah, and it seems like they're pretty good at identifying these things and knowing that, hey, we can get some minutes out of him, because Dean Wade, like if he could be what he's looked like he could be these first 6 games, then like you really dodged a bullet there, right? At the 3, because now if you have that spacing, that's all you really need there with Donovan and Darius, because you don't need more scoring with that backcourt. They can get any point that they need. And like, it's not like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are offensive liabilities. That's why they're some of the best centers in the game, is because Evan, I say this all the time, Evan will get 18 points. You won't even notice it until they tell you he got 18 because they're so efficient.
I swear that's been happening to me every night when I look at the box score. I'm like you don't notice when Evan is doing well, but he's just, a dunk here or there, a putback here or there, whatever. And all of a sudden he's at like 20 points and you're like, oh, that's a good night. That's nothing to scoff at for sure. But I always look at the box score. I'm like, oh, okay. Evan, yeah, he is out there.
Yeah, I was looking at the box score. I was like, oh, he had like 3 blocks, 18 points, 10 rebounds. Oh, no, he played well. He played really well. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like it's so hard in comparison to like the numbers that like Donovan's been putting up are so like astronomical right now that it just gets lost a little bit in the story. But I mean, I think he's still incredible, obviously.
Yeah, and then like it's interesting too watching this team, because like even though we're really excited about this Donovan Mitchell Darius Garland pairing, we know like the real ceiling on this team starts to like expand when Evan can start to be one of the best players on this team offensively, because he has so much potential that he can offer. And I think some people like it's interesting with Evan. The conversations with Evan is always like, there are people who see it and they really see it with Evan, and there are people who are like, I don't get it. Like there's really no in between with Evan. Like there's either you're on the Bill Simmons, he's gonna be a top 50 player all time already in year one conversation, or there are people like I don't get it, because it can be easy to miss, but he's really good at those putbacks. He's like the defensive stuff. I mean, like he's out there on the wing. Like if you forget he's 7 foot, that's how you can forget that this is impressive. But he's out there on the wing, like guarding wings, like, and he is just able to keep up with them foot wise. Like if he just gets a little bit stronger defensively, he's going to be a defensive player of the year at some point. And then if that strength can translate something like it did with Giannis into his offensive game, I mean, the fact that we can even say Giannis and not think it's ridiculous tells you.
Wingspan is so insane. Like when you watch him play, it's like it doesn't even look real sometimes, just like how long he is in general. But there were a couple of plays last night even where he was just able to get his like arm in somewhere that didn't seem human like. Like he really, the ceiling is extremely high for him. And I'm still on board for like 3 to 4 years from now, MVP conversation for Evan Mobley. Even maybe soon, like could be sooner than that, but I'm saying 3 to 4 just because I don't want to rush the kid. He's still young.
And you brought up something with the wingspan, and it's like I noticed this, like, because sometimes like when I look at my nephew, you know how like young kids, they'll have their arms grow out a little bit faster than like the rest of their body, and they have that like awkward stand, and you look at Evan, you like, he's got the longest arms I've ever seen on and he is 7 foot tall. Like his arms should not look long, but he has like, I don't know what's his wingspan, like 7'5" or something like that.
Crazy. I mean, it you can, like you said, when you look at him, you're like, it doesn't look right.
Yeah, like in person too. It's like you think he's tall and you see it, and then you see in person, like, oh man, no. Like JB Bickerstaff is like a big dude. You don't really be thinking about that because he's always near these guys. But it's going to be interesting. One of the things with JB that I think has gotten some criticism is his use of some of these lineups throughout the years. I think sometimes he keeps Karras in too long. Also, like there's sometimes where he just sticks with the lineup. This is not working. How do you feel he has gone about doing that? You think he's improved in that so far this year?
I think definitely so far this year. I haven't had a lot of issues so far. I do think, like you mentioned, Karras sometimes you can tell when he's going to be streaky and have his night, and I feel like JB doesn't click fast enough on that and say, okay, I can tell this is the night Karras is going to have. Maybe we stop. Or like Jetty, that's another guy where you kind of know pretty quickly the night they're going to have. So I think that's like the one area he can still improve. But I think so far compared to last season as a whole, I think he's done definitely a better job. I had more issues with it last year than I've had so far, but it is early. So things can change for sure, especially as, knock on wood, injuries pop up, different things happen. You got to adjust quickly and in the right way. That is going to be important down the stretch.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick was Kevin Love, right? Because Kevin Love, he's been a Cav longer than he's been a Timberwolf, which
crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to think about, like, because like when he got traded here, that was definitely the guy that we were like, oh yeah, once LeBron's gone, he's gone, right? Like he's not going to be here long. He ended up being the guy that stays, and like since LeBron is such a big figure, right? Like you're not going to be able to just associate him with the championship. He ends up being the face of this championship team for obvious reasons, right? And it's been interesting seeing his arc as a veteran player, right? Because this is a dude who really struggled to accept that third role in the big three, right? It was something that even when he had success, it never really felt like he wanted or accepted the role that he was in with LeBron. He just kind of like succumbed to it. Like, okay, this is just what it's going to be. Never felt like he embraced that he's the third guy or the third option here, opposite of Kyrie and LeBron. And then we know how it got after LeBron left. It got pretty contentious there for a little while. And he had the frustration with Colin Sexton and some of the young guys. And then suddenly like Evan Mobley gets there, Darius Garland gets more minutes, and then he turns into like fun grandpa Kevin, like all of a sudden out of nowhere. And this is like the most fun he's ever, like it seems like this is the most fun Kevin has ever had in his NBA career, is being the sixth man for the Cavs. And that's such an interesting arc for him, because it seemed like part of the problem that he had when he got traded here was that he did not get the ball as much as he's accustomed to. But now it seems like he's like, no, this is my role. I'm grandpa to these kids, and I'm the guy that makes threes, and everybody gets excited. Like, he just really loves his role. And it's interesting to see somebody who was always kind of, you know, when LeBron and Kyrie were here, it was like, oh, we love Kyrie, we love LeBron, they're so great, but Kevin's got to be better. Like, it was always something about Kevin, and which probably weighed on him a lot. And when LeBron left, obviously it became more about what Kevin's not doing. You know, Larry Nance is doing this, but you're not. And now it's like 180 flipped for him, where it's like Kevin can do no wrong at this point. And it's been such an interesting arc with Kevin.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the one thing I was just thinking about was how his teammates constantly like give him another like 10 years on his age. They'll be like, oh, Kevin Love, like 60-year-old grandpa. Then they'll be like 100 years old. Like, they just keep upping it like every week. They're like, oh yeah, now he's 110 years old, Grandpa Kevin Love. And I love the way that they've kind of formed this relationship. Secondly, I give him so many props for really accepting this, because I don't know how many veteran players in this league truly, who have been all-stars, had fantastic careers, won championships, would truly accept the role like this the way Kevin Love has. And I know it took some time to get there, but I think he's so valuable to this team. And I just give him a lot of credit for doing that, because I think it's a lot harder than people realize. Like, these guys they have egos, you know, like they care a lot about their career and their legacy and, you know, what they're doing on the court during the time there. That's why they got to where they are, because they're so competitive and because they care so much about it. So I just think it is impressive that he's been able to be like, hey, this is how I can benefit this team in the best way, and truly embrace it. And it's made him, I mean, the best player we've seen in years, or the best version of Kevin Love that we've seen in years. And I love it. I mean, when he gets going, there's nothing like it. Kevin Love making threes, Kevin Love taking charges. I mean, that is
the charge element of like, if there was a player in 2016, you're like, there's no way this dude's taking a charge. It was Kevin Love. Like, he was not that dude. But now he's hustle guy. Like, he has. Yep. It seemed like when he was in Minnesota, he had an identity as like this bucket getter, big rebound guy. He had like those 20-40 games where he would just get like 20 rebounds, 40 points. And he came to Cleveland and it felt like he didn't have an identity for a while. He's just another spot up shooter for the team. And now it's like, oh, Kevin has an identity again. And you brought up the point, not a lot of superstars can do it. His college teammate, Russell Westbrook, is having a massive problem with this part of his career, right? Where he's not who he could be. And his skill set and how he likes to play is something that can't sustain anymore, because he's not the level of player that can start on a championship caliber team. So now he's just kind of a roadblock. And it's interesting that Kevin's went the complete opposite direction. And it's also like they're both they were teammates at UCLA, you know? And it's just been great seeing that go that way for Kevin, because, man, they mentioned on the broadcast, it felt like this was going to be like one of those sad things where it's like, we really can't celebrate the 2016 championship like we want to, because the only guy we can get to come back is Matthew Dellavedova, right? Or something like that, you know? But now it's like, okay, we have a good relationship with Kevin. Kevin enjoys his time here. Before we get out of here, we got to talk about this ceiling. I think at 6-1, everybody's high on the Cavs, especially if you are a Cavs fan. How are you feeling about this ceiling?
I'm trying so hard to stay realistic, but it is nearly impossible when we just keep beating like really good teams. The Celtics were just in the finals last year. Like, we are beating good teams right now. And I know there's going to be streaks throughout the season and things are going to ebb and flow like they do any year. But like, it is so hard for me to not feel like this team can go deep in the playoffs, potentially like fight hard in the East. Like, I still can't put us above the Bucks. Like, I think there's just there's something special there with Giannis and the group they have where I cannot say that I think in a 7-game series we would beat them. But like beyond that, I truly think we could hang with anyone in a 7-game series and wouldn't rule us out. So that's where I'm at right now, like a step behind the Bucks, but anyone else, like I think is fair game at this point, as long as we stay healthy. Like I always have to say, knock on wood.
Definitely knock on wood. I think they look like when I watch them, I say, this is a top 3 seed in the East. This is this is definitely a top 3 seed. Like this is, and it's definitely like, there's different versions of that top 3 seed you can get, because sometimes you can get that Atlanta Hawks 2016 top 3 seed where it's like, they're not going to be the real team in the playoffs because they can't create enough off the dribble and they don't have a legit guy at the end of games that can put things away. But watching DG and Donovan Mitchell, and that's the first time since 2017 where I'm like, okay, we have 2 guys on both wings that could just score. Like, it felt like Kyrie and LeBron at some points, because it was like coming down the stretch, it's like, who's going to take the shot? And sometimes Donovan takes it and you're like, I would have liked to see DG take it. And then when you're in that position, it's like, okay, you got options. You feel really good about it, right? Because the part you don't want to be in is when anybody else takes a shot and you're like, why? You know what I mean? That was those early LeBron years. It was like, why does anybody take this shot but LeBron? But now it's like you feel comfortable with those two in those situations. Those buckets, when they have to get them in the half court, they just don't feel like they have to work hard for them, right? Like last year, I mean, especially when it was just like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley out there, those buckets came so hard to get that I'm like, hey, if the other team has 60 by halftime, we're in trouble because we can't keep up. Now it really doesn't matter what the score is. If you feel like, hey, we can clamp somebody down in the fourth quarter when we need to, and we can get any bucket that we need to at the end of the games. And it don't feel fluke. It just feels like, yeah, we can get it because they're really good at basketball on that side. This Cavs team, like, they got all the pieces that are sometimes in basketball, it's not hard to tell that a team's going to be really good. It's not like football where like there's a million different variables that can go right or wrong with the team. Basketball is just like you look at it and you go, yeah, that's going to work, or it's not going to work. And this looks like it's going to work.
Yeah, like you were talking about with like no lead is too big. It's kind of how I felt for years watching the Warriors, how frustrating it was because the team could be up by God knows how much. And you were like, the Warriors are going to come back and win. Like that's just inevitable at this point. And it was like so frustrating to watch. I was listening in on a Celtics Spaces last night just to get some enjoyment out of hearing how their fans were reacting. And they were like frustrated by watching the Cavs in that way of like, they knew when they took a decent lead, they were like, the Cavs are going to come back. And it felt so good to hear that and be that team and have that identity because it's frustrating to be on the other side of it. And I have very vivid memories of being on the other side of that. Oh,
yeah. I remember it was a game where it was when LeBron wasn't on the Cavs. It was like he was on the Heat. And the Cavs were starting Wayne Ellington, and they went up by like 22 in the first half. Tristan Thompson had like the game of his life. I think he had like a legit 20 points and like 20 rebounds in that game. This is before like people knew Tristan Thompson would be like decent for part of his career. So like they were doing that, and then LeBron did this like I'll never forget it. He did the Julius Erving play, but he just slammed it, and I was like, oh, we're losing this game. And then we were up by 20 when he did that. And I was like, oh, we're losing this game. Yeah. And I was listening to somebody talk about the Knicks game. And they were like, when Donovan Mitchell split the double team, did a spin dunk on us, we knew it was over. Like, we were up by 8 by the point, but we knew it was over because like, oh, he's coming. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. And that's what this Cavs team.
Browns are up, honestly. It's similar to the Browns where we're like, oh, they're up by 20. Doesn't matter. They're going to lose. Like, it's like almost the opposite in our.
Yeah, it's like when Ben like comes off and he gets like that little run to the right, throw it to Antonio Brown. And he's just like, yeah, okay, well, that lead's going away. Like, you know what I mean? So it's nice to give people that sense of impending doom. And, I mean, wait till Evan Mobley can be somebody who could put 30 up with them. Like, I mean, it's not that far behind. He's really, I think people are sleeping. He's getting to 20 really easily. He's getting to 18, 16 very easily. Like, it does not happen that easily for Jared Allen. When Jared Allen has 14, you know Jared Allen has 14 because he is working for that 14. Evan's getting to 18, 20 very easily. And that's just like the putback stuff, the quick flips, the easy buckets, the easy finds that he gets. Wait till he can start to just get like, because I've seen it at some points where he gets that, like, he gets in his triple threat stance and he's able to make a drive or a cut, or he starts making those threes or those fadeaways. If he gets to that point to where he can actually get in a bag and then get some buckets, like just 10 points, like that means he's going to get to 26 easy. And that's a world that I don't think a lot of people in the East want to live in, that don't live in Cleveland. But I'm looking forward to it.
They aren't ready for it.
But all right, that's going to do it for this episode. Please help us find a name in the comment section down below. We want to bring you this content on a weekly basis because there's just not enough Cavs content out there. We got to get it out there. But y'all have a great day. Have a good night. Anything else you want to say to him, Ab?
No, thanks for listening. I'm super pumped to talk about more Cavs. Like you said, I've been searching on like the national podcasts, even local ones. I have a couple I listen to, but just like craving more content. So it feels good to just even talk about it and in such an exciting time right now. So
it's like, yeah, I'm not crazy. I'm noticing this too. You know what I mean? Like it just feels good. But y'all have a great day.